Do you want to know who the best champions are for each class in Paladins Open Beta 60? Well, you're in luck, as I'm going to go through my opinion on which champions are best for each of the classes in this current patch. Now, as always, tier lists are subjective. They're down to a person's preference. Sometimes people just enjoy playing different champions and are more comfortable with them. They also come down to the skill level and skill bracket you're playing at. Currently, I'm Diamond 1 and ranked, and fairly often getting matched with Masters and around that sort of area. Some champions really perform well, as I've seen when you're trying to rank, when you're in your professionals, or if you're in Gold and Platinum, as I climb myself. Also, some champions' performances linked specifically to maps themselves. Some champions are better on long maps, for example, snipers and things like that. So bear that in mind as I go through my list. But as I go through mine, be sure to let me know your list in the comments section below for your best champions in this current patch, and if you agree or disagree with what I come out with. Also, as ranked competitive has got more popular and is the way I most enjoy the game currently, and because you can ban 2 champions, and because the meta often has 2 tanks, I'll often list more than 1 champion being best for each class, as you may be limited in what you can pick after the banning phase. So first of all, we're going to withdraw like a shadow into the damage section. So for me, one of the biggest pickups this patch is Xiaolin himself. Now, Xiaolin's always been quite strong in the game, but he's really found his feet in the past few patches, and especially with the Desert Shadow Legendary. That big bonus damage you get when you come out of your invisibility, added with the fact that it just gives you a little bit more escape, you can have a huge impact on the game. Not only do you have a stun, and you can pair that up with your planter to do huge amounts of damage, your just general shots do a lot of damage themselves. Now, Xiaolin is one of the better champions, I think, because of the fact that A, with your movement with the withdrawal, and with the need for some skill in aim, can push Xiaolin to some insane heights. Even though he's not area damage, he puts down enough damage to the double tank meta to be able to both break shields and also generally burst people down that are undefended and maybe static on a point. Not only that, a lot of players now are trying to build up Xiaolin's ultimate as quick as possible, as it can be quite a clutch, even point-winning sometimes, ultimate when you have the skill to pull off all of the shots, and often you can take on several enemy team members and inflict some mayhem. So for me, Xiaolin is perched firmly in the top spots. Rising to Ascendancy is Bomb King, my second damage pickup this patch. So Bomb King has always been quite strong. Between their Grumpy Bomb, with pretty insane crowd control potential to be able to stun enemies in a large area, a Poppy Bomb, which actually is, even though it was nerfed, is still quite a decent escape. It gives you some vertical movement, so you can get up onto legends and things like that. But also you could use it with Jolt to push enemies away, but they're probably going to get some resilience further in the game, so I'm not sure how much that card is powerful. His ultimate is one of those big game-winning ultimates where you will instantly kill one person if you go right up to them and you slam into them, most likely, unless they've got a very huge health pool, and everybody around you will be hurt. And as long as your teammates notice that, then they can probably finish everybody off. So it is one of the big ultimates in the game. But not only that, since the fix, so before, Bomb King was slightly unreliable because sometimes the bombs didn't go off or they didn't register, and that has been improved a lot this patch. Honestly, I think that it's way easier to be consistent with your damage and not get caught out this patch, and it really shows. I was actually tempted to put him at the very top spot, but I still feel he's feeling his feet a little bit, but definitely an extremely strong damage champion at the moment. Also feels great to wear the Pumpkin skin, even though you sometimes bug out into your King Bomb animation. Finally, and been a mainstay in my list for quite a little while, is Cassie. So I've talked about Cassie before. She's still strong as a flex champion, being able to switch instantly between backline damage dealing, so peeking corners, firing at corridors and things like that where enemies going to come through to try and demount them and stuff like that when you're defending, but also being able to switch balls to the wall, getting into the enemy's backline, flanking. And on maps with little verticality, her hypermobility with instant cooldown dodge rolling from incitement can be insane, and not just have less verticality like Fractal, but just generally any map. But I'll actually talk later in the flanks about why Cassie isn't quite as queenly as she might have been before. Worth just mentioning honorable mentions. So Dragos and Willow sort of hold the same sort of space. They both do lots of damage, and if not focused on, can have a huge impact in the game. And personally, I feel that they are better pickups depending on the skill level. I found that people really struggled to deal with them when I was playing in my placement games in Platinum and in Gold, but in Diamond they aren't so much of a strong pickup. They'll probably get countered or be always taken out and focused on during the matches, because they're quite easy to pick off. But it's always worth talking about that. So next up is flankers, and this meta has sort of lended its hand a bit more to the flank class. I'll talk about the tanks as well, with Torval being able to give shields to flankers and things like that, but also flankers receiving quite a few buffs over the past few patches. So first off is Maeve. Not just Rave Maeve, the normal Maeve too. So Maeve does a lot of what Cassie can do, poke damage from long range with no damage drop off. You switch up to going into the enemy backlines when there's an opening, so you've got this flex potential, but also you have the added bonus of vertical ability, which Cassie doesn't have, which is part of the reason why, for me, Cassie has fallen down slightly from where she was, even though she is a strong champion and has been for a long time. So for me, Maeve is even first ban worthy in a lot of ranked matches, and even esports games are doing it too, and especially depending on the map. If you go on Stone Keep, it's practically a Maeve playground, so you don't really want to be playing against a Maeve that can just dodge over the walls and the ramparts. With easy to land damage at all ranges, with self-sustain in her Q, with a strong ultimate blinding the enemy, which can win team fights, and lots of mobility that are linked to abilities in your kit that you can reset with your Q. So yes, Maeve is definitely one of the strongest champions in the game right now. Another stepping into the second place is Androxus, and probably on a very equal footing. So since the rework and people have gotten used to the weirdness of visual recoil and the inaccuracy randomness, he has definitely found himself having a huge impact on matches. Out of all the champions getting into your face, Androxus is probably number one you don't want next to you. In OB60 he got a punch. Now for me it hasn't really changed that much about him. It's extremely situational, but unlike Defiance, can actually be useful if you run out of ammo. But if you do have bullets left in your magazine, you probably won't be spamming your punches, as it locks you out of any other actions, and sometimes it's very important to be able to another step away. But also sometimes if you can tell that an enemy's at about 700 damage to take down, rather than getting 2 shots off, the punch can be better. So it actually is useful and has slightly made Androxus better, but Androxus already has what's good about him: his reversal, being able to reset in the right loadout, being able to go into any backlines, then use a reversal to get away, and having basically 2 escapes with the reversal, being able to throw back damage and also being able to reset it, and also another step being a strong escape with vertical mobility, being able to heal yourself with the right cards, and being able to split it into 3 steps, which is quite important as well because you can change directions whilst you're in the air. But the biggest thing is his main damage in his pistol, which was buffed with the DPS increased damage per second as the speed of the weapon firing was increased, and even against tanks you can get in their faces and start bursting them down, especially with the Dark Stalker legendary card, as their health balls are huge, so you're going to get to that 40% quite quickly and get extra bonus damage. So for people's intrigue, I thought I'd make an honourable mention for Talus here. So his damage buff has certainly given him more impact in matches, and people are getting used to the teleport, like blinking with Eevee, but I haven't played against or with seriously enough to gauge them, and it does seem they're still niche, but time and practice might let them climb the meta ladder. And I think definitely if you're playing casual games, or if people aren't ready for the Talus, they can do a lot of damage, a lot like Sky, but with the blink of Eevee. So they're quite easy to use as well. Shell spinning into the top of the front line is Makoa, so he pretty much makes it in everyone on my list. He was nerfed last patch with his Hook Legendary Pluck, only doing bonus damage on the first shot rather than the first hit, but still in the right hands you'll probably be getting that first hit, so I don't think it's that much of a nerf. I mean, it depends on your own skill and your own aim, but it's not going to be that hard to hit somebody that's been hooked over to you. What makes Makoa great is the hook. It's just such a strong mechanic, disabling and naturally marking a target for your team to burst down, that it alone makes him extremely strong. And not to mention he can be aggressive with a fairly decent amounts of damage, a large health pool, and decent shielding, and is my favourite bruiser champion at the moment, acting as a flank sort of tank hybrid. But the big thing is, Makoa is often banned in matches, so we need to go on to some other options. Next up is Ashe. For me, another strong choice for bruising, getting into the enemy's backlines, completely disrupting them, trying to do their own sort of damage or poke damage onto the point. She's got high health, can diminish damage with shoulder bash legendary cards, so it is hard to take her out. She's got a good escape. Her ultimate can be quite strong as long as the enemy team don't have too much crowd control too, and her own crowd control can, well, control the enemy's flow, knocking enemies apart, of course, from their shooting, and even away from the objective in overtime. The damage from the cannon is pretty relentless as well, and can really demoralize an enemy trying to dodge into cover to be still hit. and often you can chase down a flank or something that was in low health and really keep them pinned down, or keep even a group of enemies pinned down because you can shoot round the corner. You can also use your shoulder bash to get into fights and cover large amounts of the map very quickly, and just generally, she's a very strong champion. And honestly, it's often a chore to go up against a good Ashe that's always on your case. Next up is Torvald. Grandpa's back, folks. So with the added range of the main attack, they have much more viability, especially on bigger maps, and he's not such a niche champion anymore. And honestly, without the damage drop-off, even though the base damage isn't that high, it's very effective and can give a lot of poke damage, trying to cut off and pre-firing corners and places that people are going to come from. You can do a lot of damage, put people off from coming down, and sort of denying a lot of areas. His silence can especially be insane, as now it lasts so long, and against the strong flanks at the moment, and the Cassies rolling in and out, you can keep them from diving in and out of the point, and just pinning them down to kill them. On that note, he also enables the flankers in your team to dive in and amp up the damage of the Field Study legendary card, and base shields, giving them extra escape. A few patches ago, Kuji Craze were trying to give a go to the dive meta. Well, I think we've got maybe a little bit more dive currently in OB60. His recharge ability, though, is pretty weak at the moment. It's also almost become a bit of a non-ability, and he is kind of a damage sponge, but I feel everything else about him currently outweighs those sort of downsides. Oh, and did I mention, it's working! Seriously, it can be a clutch ultimate, especially at the last moment of pushing or capturing a point to secure it, and obviously those funny moments where you push 3 or 4 enemies off the edge of the map. So finally, on the long list of tanking champions, as often you'll probably have one banned out and you have to pick 2 on each of the teams anyway, Barrett's just got a lot of mechanical wonders up his sleeve. With his turrets, you can deny and draw enemies' focus a lot, and replenish that nuisance, as you'll have your turrets reset pretty often. Plus, the turrets with the cards can heal themselves, and also yourself, and gives him a touch of self-sustain. Plus, his shield, whilst on a relatively long cooldown, is pretty strong, and Barrett can ride around it whilst placing turrets to bamboozle a lot of enemies. Plus, with his Tinkering legendary card, which I think is really important, like Torvald, extends your range to engage with enemies on larger maps, or things that do a lot to counter your turrets, like a Drogo sniping or a Willow, something like that. And with some tracking and projectile compensation, you'll be able to do some damage to them and put them off from going for you. And I think it's really important, actually. Plus, his ultimate's relatively strong. The shield itself is quite a big deal, and some of the extra damage, but also just mainly keeping yourself up, and also your allies. In line with the fact that some of the tanks might be banned out, ignoring at the heels of Ashe and Makoa as sort of a mainstay tank, but I feel that she's maybe not quite there yet, and Ruckus can be situational, acting as a bit more of a damage dealer with quite a bit of maneuverability, so can be picked up as well if some of these are banned. Finally, onto the supports. Healing his way through walls, Genos. I have 2 top spots for this for the main healers, and Genos is one of them. And the thing is, the healing output you can have as a good Genos, hiding in the back lines, coming out for a clutch void grip, or if safe to finish off an enemy or add some damage, is pretty insane, that healing output. They consistently put out strong heals, and those strong heals are put out consistently across your whole team, and with some cooldown reduction can be speeded up. And pretty much every game, unless they're completely pinned down and foxed out by a flanker or the team crumbles, will be the highest healer by quite a margin. And his toggleable escape also means that if you're a little bit more aggressive, you can probably get away with it, as it's not uncommon if you win with a Genos for them to only have a couple of deaths, as you just run circles around enemies trying to come after you. I do think that they are slightly diminished with the flankers being so strong in this patch, as a good Androxus or a Maeve getting to the backlines will probably just take you out. So that's a little downside they have at the moment, but still extremely strong healer. Next up is Maldamba. Personally, I prefer Maldamba with their impact on the match. Their burst healing is slightly higher, especially with the legendary card Many Spirits. His stuns can disrupt enemies more often, and with skill can be quite the annoyance, and also you're not locked out like the Genos. Plus, they have the ability to heal in an area with their gourd, but also being more aggressive will get your ultimate up quite quickly, as hitting enemies with it can charge your ulti, and boy, what an ultimate. It is one of the point-winning top-tier ultimates in the game, and in my opinion, and even if the team counter it with resilience, they may have taken that instead of a utility pick, more cauterized or base defense to go up against your ultimates and your stuns. But also, it's just generally great at picking out enemies. You can do it on a single person. Sometimes you can solo ult on somebody just to make sure to kill them. And Maldamba is very much up there. Finally, on the supports, and this is one where it's quite situational on the map, and isn't exactly for supporting in terms of healing, is Groot. No, sorry, I mean Grover. So this is situational on the map, and I'm not talking about a Grover healer, so this is Grover damage with the Ferocity legendary card. And again, on long maps, this can be insane. Think Frozen Guard and Timbermill. What you can do is throw your axes from either the point or from a point in the map further away to deny doorways and corridors where people can't really go through without taking 1,000 damage, because you've got unlimited huge damage axes with huge hitboxes that can pretty much deny areas. And I've seen it played in rank quite a few times where this has been pretty insane, especially on Frozen Guard. You can defend enemy attacks from your base extremely well, and also deny quite a lot of the passageways, even though they've changed the map a bit, so some of the walls limit you a little bit how you can do that, but it's still very strong. Plus he has some other things going for him, so his ultimate can be clutch early game, especially when Cauterize 3 isn't out just yet. And also he's got some self-sustain with his heal, so sometimes gonna out-duel people if he's got the range drop on them. And also that cripple can be very strong currently against the flanking meta, so you'll be able to cripple them so they can't get away, especially against like the Cassie, the Maeve, and the Androxus. Crippling them is very strong indeed. Anyway, that was my list for this patch of the best champions in my opinion for each classes. Do you agree or disagree with my lists? And what are your lists? Again, please let me know in the comments section below, and do you have anything that you would like to add? What might be interesting as well is about what skill bracket you're playing in ranked, what your opinion is compared to mine, for example. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Joshino.